Wonderful. Well, again, I'm Angela McDonald. Thank you for joining. I'm going to share my screen with you now. There we go. And today we are going to talk about a little interview prep, and we're going to talk about that dreaded question we all know that comes, and what's my weakness? We all know we have them, but having that vulnerability in an interview setting can be tough. And so it's a really good question to prepare for, as much as we might want to ignore it and dread it coming. So what I'd like to do today is we're going to talk through this question, give you some tips and some advice, and then hopefully we've got enough people who can stay on and even have some practice. So if you haven't met me yet, I'm Angela McDonald. I'm a career coach and with Udacity. I also work as a corporate trainer. I've worked in finance and had my own business. I've lived in America, Australia, China, and Singapore, and I am back in America now in the Chicago area. My training, I specialize in communication and presentation skills. A lot of that incorporating with interview skills comes hand in hand. So a lot of what I do in career coaching is also helping people prepare for interviews, preparing to present themselves, answer questions in the best way possible. So the agenda today, we're going to talk about some strategies around this question for 20-25 minutes. Then I'd love to have a breakout session where you can pair up or work in groups of 3 and practice this question. And then we'll regroup and share some feedback. If we don't have enough people on to do some of the practice, then we can make that breakout session a little bit shorter and just come back in, have some questions, and go from there. Thank you to those of you just joining us now. Again, am Angela McDonald. I've got some people in the chat who've let me know where they are. Thank you. And this is our agenda today. And for the interview strategy, we're addressing the question, what is your greatest weakness? So again, we're going to break down the interview question, dissect it a little bit. We're going to learn tips and techniques for answering the question. Then when you get in your groups, ideally in groups of 3, then you can practice as being the interviewer, the job candidate, or just listening and observing. And then we'd like everyone to give feedback to each other. So our goal is, we don't want you to look like this lady up there on the screen and be terrified when they ask the question, what is your greatest weakness? I find that the biggest mistakes that I see that happen are people just don't admit they have a weakness. They don't really come up with anything substantial, so it sounds very superficial. Or some people talk way too much and they let that black cloud of their weakness that they feel inside kind of overcome them in the interview, and they talk way too much about it. They try to justify it, and they kind of give too much information, and then are seen as not as confident at all. And we don't want to lose your confidence in the interview. Of course, when we talk about our weakness, when we talk about something negative, it can automatically break down a little bit of our confidence. So we want to find some ways to avoid that happening. And at this stage, I would like to say, if anyone would like to unmute at any point, we've got a small group. So please feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question at any time. I will take time for questions at the end and throughout the presentation, but please feel free to unmute yourself and speak up if you like. So why do they want to know my weakness? What do you think? I'm going to share here a whiteboard, and I'd love to see if we can get some of you annotating. If I can get my whiteboard up in just a second. So I might be having a little bit of, there we go. So why do you think they want to know your weakness? Why do they ask about your weakness? You can annotate on this slide. Just click on the little blue T at the top of your screen that you should see and type anywhere you like. If you're having any issues with that piece of it, you can just type in the chat. But why do you think they want to know your weakness? Give me some reasons, or unmute yourself and speak up. 3 ways you can communicate here. You can type on the board, you can type in the chat, or you can unmute and speak up. But why do you think in an interview, Max, would you like to, hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Why do you think they want to know your weakness?
I think they want to know my weakness during working time.
Okay. And why do you think it's important? Why don't they just want to know your good stuff?
I think they want to know about some weakness about you value myself.
How you value yourself? Yeah, very good. Good point. Yeah, and someone else said it in the chat to see if you have self-awareness. So seeing how you see yourself, how you understand yourself, that self-awareness, and how you value yourself. So very, very good. Thanks for speaking up. Someone else said here, they typed up here, to see if you are aware of your skills and limitations. Absolutely. Being self-aware is really one of the first steps in having a growth mindset, wanting to be successful, be better at what we do. And when we're aware of what we're not as good at, we can work towards filling that gap, overcoming that weakness, and moving forward. Someone else posted in, they want to know how our attitude towards our weakness. That's good. Yeah, understanding our attitude towards our weakness. And we're going to look at, I'm going to share with you some ideas on common weaknesses out there. I know that sounds like a funny thing to share, but sometimes people really get stuck with this question. So I like to give some ideas, and I'll share that with you in a little bit. I'm going to pop the presentation back up here in just a second. Thanks for annotating. That is one of my favorite tools. So when we look at this image here, and we see the icebergs, and we all know that what's underneath and those icebergs is way bigger, right, than what we see on top. So when you're in an interview, they know what they see on the surface, but they need to dig a little deeper. They want to know everything else that's under there. So it's really important that they ask a lot of questions. And as much as most of us hate this question, it is really important to understand people. A few reasons I have here is they want to know if you're self-aware enough to know your weakness, which we talked about. And do you look for areas to improve in yourself? If you really believe you have no weakness, then that means you have no ideas on where you want to get better. And if we don't have ideas on where we think we want or need to get better, that really limits our growth in our lives and our careers. And then the next thing is, what do you do to overcome this weakness? Sometimes we have a weakness that we can work on, we can improve. It's a technical skill, and we just need to get better and have more practice. So that's how we overcome it. Sometimes it might be a weakness that's, maybe for me personally, I probably will never be a programmer, pretty sure. So for me, I need to, maybe if I need some technical work done, I need to have a partner, maybe someone that I can delegate to at work, or that I can team up with. And that's how I would overcome maybe that weakness. So we can look at different ways that we overcome it or get around it. So it's good to know and think about, from the interviewer's perspective, what they're looking for and why they want to know. So thinking about identifying your weakness, and as I go through some of these questions, I want you to ask yourself and think about, just jot some things down for yourself that maybe a weakness you usually share in an interview, or you're thinking about that would be your weakness. And if you're stuck on what that weakness is, think about asking yourself these questions. For me, it's often, what task do I really dread doing at work? What do I really not like? And that is oftentimes what we're not as good at, right? Because we oftentimes don't like to do what we're not good at. Or what do I struggle with at work? Or maybe it's that thing, if you have your to-do list, it always is that thing you push to the bottom. You do it the last thing at the end of the day because you really don't want to do it. Those are sometimes your weaknesses. Or maybe it's putting something at the bottom of your list that is your weakness. Did my manager ever point out something I should improve? So thinking back to maybe performance reviews that you've had and people that have given you feedback at different times, peers, managers, what have they told you? Is there a consistent theme that people share with you that comes up that is probably your weakness? Has someone criticized you for working in a particular way? That's going to help you think about that weakness. Have I had a performance review that highlighted a certain weakness? So maybe you had a performance review or a 360 feedback where certain topics were brought up. And sometimes it's not like a huge weakness. It doesn't have to be something that never has to be something you have forever. Could just be something that you need to work on, and being aware of that and thinking about what weakness it is that you have. Another question to ask yourself could be that last question there. What caused me problems when I was studying or working on a project? Where did I keep getting stuck? Where did I feel like I can't do this anymore because of this? So take a few seconds and write down, just for your personal use, think about those questions and maybe just jot down some ideas that you have of things that you might want to point out when you answer this interview question. So I'll give you a second to think here. I don't want to rush you into it because I would like to have us practice here in a little while. So if you can get a little prepared on something, we'll give you a few more tips and help to get to that point before we get started in practice. So what are some criteria to think about as you're thinking about what this weakness could be, what it looks like? It should be authentic. It should be real. You know, if you do some Googling out there and you look at, oh, what's a good thing to say for weakness, and you know, there's like really common things out there that people say, oh, I'm a perfectionist, but that's actually a strength. And we're going to talk about why you don't want to use things like that. So I want you to really think deeply about yourself. What is it that you wish you were better at? Typically in the interview, we want to make sure that whatever you're stating as your weakness is not essential to the job. It needs to be something very minor to the job and fixable. So if the particular job you're looking at is a computer vision engineer and you haven't learned computer vision yet, you probably shouldn't be interviewing. But even if you got to that point, it would be hard to maybe talk about the fact that that was your weakness. If you're at the point of the interview stage, you should know that you have most of the essential qualifications. So then thinking about the weaknesses as things that aren't quite as essential. They're things that are minor to the job and things you can fix. If you're looking at a job and the number one criteria is something that you know you're not good at, that's probably not a good match to be applying. And then the last thing is the most important. It should be something that you can work on improving and hopefully maybe already working on. You already have strategies that you have started using to cope with this particular weakness or overcome this particular weakness. So we want to have your weakness and what it is that you do to overcome that weakness. A few things that I want you to avoid saying is, I don't have a weakness, because that's probably going to lose your chances of getting the job. Everyone has a weakness. Everyone has something they're not as good at as another skill they have. What I mentioned earlier, oh, my weakness is being a perfectionist, but that's actually a strength because I'm very detail oriented. Pick something else. You need to pick something else that really shows what that weakness is, and then talk about how you overcome it. A few other things that we don't like to see that are overused and kind of non-authentic. I work too much, I work too hard, I take on too much, I'm a perfectionist. So Scratch all of those. Again, look deeper at yourself and figure out what is your real weakness. So now I'm going to give you a strategy on answering this question. So hopefully you've got an idea now on what you might be thinking is your weakness. The first thing to do is always to state the weakness, obviously. And again, especially if you're someone who tends to talk too much in general about, and give too much detail where it's not needed, then this is a really important thing, to be very brief and concise when you state that weakness, because you don't want to dwell on it and make it sound worse than it even is. It's just like, hey, this is my particular weakness. And then next is to explain how you manage or aim to overcome this weakness. And this piece too, that's why this piece of the arrow here is bigger, is because that's where you want to do most of your talking. That's what gives them more insight into you, is when you talk about how you manage or aim to overcome this weakness. So here are some ideas on that part 2, where you're explaining how you are managing to aim or overcome this weakness. You can leverage one of your strengths, maybe, to overcome the weakness. So maybe that your weakness is programming. Maybe it's something that you programming in a certain language, and you know that's not your strength, but you know how to do it on another platform, in another program. So you do it that way, but you're working to get better at something over here. Maybe something like that. Maybe it's a technical skill and you're taking a course, something like the Udacity course you've taken or in the process of taking. Maybe you partner with someone who can help you. Maybe at work you team up with someone often to make sure that things are getting done. Maybe you're in a position where you can delegate someone else to handle that particular task. Maybe you implement organizational tools if you have a hard time managing multiple projects, or if it's your time management. Maybe using some organizational tools is what you use to help you. And last, maybe you tap into your resources at work or around you to help you solve problems, and maybe tap into a subject matter expert. And I'll give you an example, maybe as someone who's not very detail oriented, and the person is more in maybe a product sales role, and they're very good at explaining the product, they understand it, but maybe their attention to detail isn't quite as strong. So when they are preparing maybe the data visualizations and the presentation to the client, they have to partner up with someone else who can give that a little bit closer look to check the details of that project. So those are just some ideas that you can use to think of. So if you're sitting there saying, okay, this is my weakness, but I have no idea what to say, how I overcome it, these are some ideas on how to get to that step 2 of the question, or sorry, step 2 of your answer. And we're going to go through a few examples, but at this stage, does anyone have any questions on this answering strategy? And I'll back up so you can see it again. Again, we're going to state our weakness quickly and concisely, and then we're going to explain how we manage or aim to overcome this weakness. So any questions at this stage? Please feel free to type it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask.
I have a question.
Yes?
About which type should I state my weakness? Like I'm software engineer, but my weakness is about data structure and algorithms is really essential skills to apply for a job. But it's really hard to good at or better at data structure. So can I say something? I'm overthinking all the time because I'm not good at data structure. But in the after, I take the some courses to help me to overcome that weakness. So right now, I'm really good at.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think something like that, you can say that, you know, maybe you say something like, I feel like data structures have always been one of my big challenges. So And that's an area I struggled with. So I decided to take a class and talk a little bit about the class. And now you're feeling a lot more confident. You're a lot quicker at putting these together. And you really feel like you've made great strides, but we'll continue to even work on this more. As you know, it's kind of a new skill that you've built.
Okay.
So I think that's a good example.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's look at a few more examples. So here, someone might say, I don't have a lot of experience with back-end development. Their answer, the second part where they're talking about overcoming, however, I worked in front-end for 2 years and worked closely with the back-end developers. I've also recently completed the Udacity nano degree in full stack to expand my skills in that place. So you see how much more content is over there, and when we talk about what we're doing to overcome it, then the conversation really shifts. It shifts away from that weakness and the negative piece that's just this little bit of you into everything else you're doing. The first one now, another sample. As a new manager, I've noticed I'm not very comfortable delegating tasks. However, I've talked to an HR manager and received some tips and resources to be a better delegator. I learned to outline the task and the timing in detail first so that I'm more organized when talking to my direct reports. This has helped me be more effective. So even though it's something I'm not as comfortable with, it's not my strength, I've looked at ways to start getting better at this. Or I've struggled in the past with effectively presenting my data insights. So I asked my manager if I can enroll in a presentation skills course. She was very supportive, and I recently completed a 2-day training. It helped equip me with the new skills, and I'm feeling much more confident when presenting. Then you might go on to say, and some of these skills you're continuing to work on. A few other tips, again, kind of like I've mentioned, that step 1, be very concise. Don't overshare weakness. Avoid being defensive. If they want to ask a little more about that weakness, it's just because they're trying to get to know you better and asking more questions. So don't get defensive about it. And remember to focus more on how you're developing, that's step 2, than focusing on the weakness itself. So what I'd like to do now, if we've got enough people on that would like to share, and let me just see how we're doing numbers wise here. What's going to happen is I'll put you in breakout rooms, ideally with 3 people in your group. And I'd like you to take turns being the interviewer, the job candidate, and one person just being the observer. And saying, the first person starts by just saying, they'll say, hey, Magdi, what's your greatest weakness? And Magdi will say, blah, 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 blah. And then talk about it a little bit and share what you find. The breakout sessions are not recorded, so no one else is going to see these. The session is recorded, but not the breakout sessions. Best practice for breakout rooms, if you haven't done this, make sure you participate. Step out of your comfort zone, step up, speak up. If you get into the room and no one's talking, then please, someone with the first initial that's at the closest to the beginning of the alphabet, in my case, that would be me, Angela, I would start first, be the first one to talk. If you're the first one to talk, you can say, hey, I'll be the observer, and then you can delegate to everybody else. So it helps to speak up. Please pay attention and listen to each other. You might get some ideas on how somebody words something that you really like. You might get an idea of how to say something a little differently, and offer each other thoughtful feedback. Did they sound confident even though they were talking about a weakness? Did they talk too much about the weakness and not enough about the solution? And if you'd like, if you can think of something, kind of that bonus bullet point at the end, if you can ask the candidate a follow-up question to elevate the conversation even further, that would be great. All right. So let's see. If you haven't done a breakout room yet, that your screen's going to look like this. It's going to pop up and invite you to the breakout room. If at this point you cannot, will not join a breakout session, please feel free to go ahead and leave the webinar. I will not be offended. I know some people aren't ready to share, and that's okay. What we're going to do is have the breakout sessions. People are going to go in separate rooms. I'll pop in the rooms, check on everybody, and we'll spend a few minutes in there, give you all time to be the interviewer and the job seeker. This is where we all get better. When we just have all this information in our head and practice interviews in our head, we're never as good until we say some of these things out loud. Okay?
Sure, okay.
So let's be brave. Let's make it happen. And be honest and kind and give feedback. And feel free to, once you get in the breakout room, please make sure you're unmuted. And it's even better if you can turn on your video if possible. All right. So here we go. We are going to, there's going to be, you'll either have 3 or 4 people in a room. So based on that, you can decide, just make sure everyone has a chance being the person who is the job candidate, okay? So here you go. Have fun, and I'll pop in the rooms, okay? You should see a message that is asking you to join. Just click join. I see 2 people are still in the main room, Jung Soon and Aman. If you can click join so you can go into the room, that would be great. Might just switch you around so you get a new message. Hi, Aman, are you able to join?
Sorry, I was mute. I said I was in a room and then suddenly I got out of it.
Okay, let me see if I can.
I was with Fairy.
Okay, I don't know what it's doing. So I'm going to click it one more time. Sometimes it just glitches out on me. I'm going to give you a new room and then just hit accept and hopefully you'll get there, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Uh-huh. You see a message now?
I couldn't see my partner.
Okay.
Could
Yeah,
you see her?
I saw her in the main room, but I don't know why she's.
Yeah, well, she is speaking, but oh, she maybe she is don't have a good don't have a good.
Oh, there she is.
Ah,
Can you
I'm
see her
back.
Oh yeah, hello.
Very.
See you.
Great. I'll let the 2 of you practice, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks
Okay,
a
great.
lot. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, Fairy. So
Hi.
Hi, I'm just going to observe a little so you can ignore me, or if you can ask questions as you go. But for now, just ignore me.
Okay, sure. We share our weakness.
Yeah.
Me and Marina, but we can't hear. We can't hear Johnson.
Okay.
Johnson. Yeah. So
you, Max and Marina both had a turn.
Yeah. We both have a turn. So we
Okay.
we can try it again, Marina.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for me while I have the two of you here?
Oh, this is the first time our use break group. Yeah. So we try to practice more effectively.
Okay.
Maybe.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Great. I'll let you practice again, and I'll see how the other room is doing. And if you're both done, you can just hit the button that says leave room and then come back to the main room.
Oh, okay, sure.
And if you can think this time of when you ask the question and they give you the answer, see if you can think of another question to ask them to go even deeper.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. So we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome back. So I would like to hear, and I was able to pop in and see most of you. Tell me something that you thought your partner did well, or something you liked, or something you learned. Does anyone have a shout out they can share? And feel free to just unmute yourself or type in the chat. Anyone?
Okay.
Yes.
I'm really happy to have a break group. It's my first time to take like that. So I have a opportunity to sharing my weakness with my group, Marina. So I talk about my weakness is about front end because I'm software engineer. So I have classes at Udacity, right? 9 degrees focused on full stack developer. So right now I'm really confidence. Sorry,
Yes.
confidence. Yeah, confidence about my front end. So it's really good chance to sharing my experience with Marina. Thank you.
Good. Very good. Anyone else want to share something that happened in their room, something you learned or talked about? I'll share a little bit of what Aman and Ferry were in the same room. Is that right? Yeah, I think, yeah. We talked a little bit about if there's something that feels a little more personal, like a behavioral improvement or weakness that you feel like you have. And in cases where it does feel a little more emotional, it feels a little personal, you don't have to share it. There's nothing you have to share in an interview. Remember, as I said to the two of them, your resume and what you bring in an interview is your best self. No one's saying you have to open all the closets in your life and tell people everything that's ever happened to you. So you're bringing your best self into that interview, just like you bring your best self to work. So if there's something you really struggle with personally that you feel like is a weakness, it doesn't have to be what you share in the interview. So don't feel like, oh, I have to tell them everything. I've had people before have something, maybe they've had a gap in their career. They stayed home for a while and they had problems in their life and they feel like, oh, I have to give all this information out there. That's not the case. You can choose what you want to share. Now you can't be so reserved you're not giving enough information, because you need to give enough that they get to know you and they see the best professional side of you. And that's what's most important. So if there is something you're going to talk about that you do feel like gets a little personal, a little more emotional, make sure you write it out. Anything that you feel like is going to be hard to talk about or you're going to have a challenge with, write those answers out, practice them so you feel more confident, and don't memorize it to the word for word, but be comfortable talking about it. Any other thoughts, questions at this stage? We're kind of at the end of the content, end of the breakout rooms. I'm so glad you all practice. I think that's great. But does anyone have any other questions that they'd like to ask about this particular interview question or anything else? Let's find out what nano degree everyone is taking or has taken. You can share in the chat which nano degree you're taking or you have already taken. Let us know. Also, if you'd like to share contact details, since you've gotten to know each other a little bit, you can also feel free to put your LinkedIn profile in the chat. Let's see. My chat is hiding from me. So let me get back here. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing for a second so I can see the chat. It didn't want to pop out here for me. So we have data analyst, business analytics, intro to programming, data analyst, machine learning, deep learning. Excellent. And Max has put in a LinkedIn profile. If anyone else would like to copy their LinkedIn profile, please do so now. I will also jump over to LinkedIn and get my profile handy as well. Any questions? If you're new to Udacity or still kind of learning what's available from a career support standpoint, we have typically at least once a week, there's some type of live event like this. It might be a workshop such as this. It could be a webinar. We often have an AMA, Ask Me Anything. So keep up to date on the calendar, the events calendar, and I'll pop that up here in just a second so that you can, I'll put my LinkedIn in as well. And make sure you keep track of the events, attend things like this. This makes a big difference when people practice, get out of our comfort zone. We are way better when we go into interviews. So I hope you all found it useful. And besides the events that we have, there's also the career projects. You can get a review for your resume, your LinkedIn, with some programs, GitHub, and a cover letter. And of course, there's the career coaching that most people have access to. It depends on your nano degree and the program you're in, but typically on average about 4 coaching sessions. And we have a team of 7 coaches. So when you go in to book your session, you can see the 7 different coaches and pick whoever you like or whoever's schedule matches yours. You can see profiles for everyone. We have them kind of based around the world. So that's it for me. I will pop up on my screen again a couple links so that you can see where those events are if you're not sure. Any questions? Anything else about Udacity, about what's available to you? Feel free to unmute yourself. How do you arrange a coaching session? You go to the career portal, and in your classroom, go to the career portal and you should see one-to-one coaching sessions. What I have here now is the student hub that you can go, and if you go to the careers channel, there's always coaches in there. Not at every minute, but if you tag one of the coaches, especially if you go in there and you tag me or any of the coaches listed, we'll make sure we see your question. There's also always a coach in there live at one point during about 6 days a week, fielding questions that come in. You can always email career support, and the bottom there is the events that you can find and keep up with. But that going into that hub is usually the best way. If you have a quick question about anything career related, and get on that channel, that we answer things pretty quickly. So pop in there, ask your question. Obviously, if it's a more detailed personal question, those one-to-one sessions are best. Anything else before we sign off? I know it's very early in the morning for some of you. And for me, it's just getting to the late afternoon, close to dinner time.
Thank you for your sharing about how to express our weakness during interview time. I'm also weak about a cover letter. Maybe we have event later about focus on how to write a cover letter.
Yeah, and there is a cover letter project, so there's a lot of great videos and tips and advice in there. And you can get your cover letter reviewed as well. So when you go into your career hub, your career portal, go to career projects, and you'll see one for cover letter. And then oftentimes what people will do is they'll do the project, they'll draft a cover letter, and then when they have a one-to-one coaching session, they'll ask the coach to say, hey, can you take another look at this? Can we talk about it more from a strategic view, and help you maybe suggest some more tweaks and changes as well.
Well, awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm just going to pop over to the chat. There are a couple of questions there.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, Angela. So can we do the same thing with the resume? So because I have a coach session in, I think, 10 days.
Yep.
So it would be better to like submit the both of them, and then when I receive, then discuss it again with the coach, right?
Yeah, I think, but if you haven't had time to do the project and you want to go ahead and give it to the coach, that's okay too. So for instance, today I had a session with someone and he said, I'd really like to get your thoughts on my resume. Can I email it to you right now? So while we were live in our session, he emailed it. I popped it up. And again, from a very high level strategic view, I made suggestions on some things to switch around and some fine tuning. And then he's kind of doing it the opposite way. So then he's going to go make the changes I suggested, then do the project, submit it for a review. So I think if you feel like your resume is in pretty good shape, go ahead and share it with your coach and talk about it. If you're like, I've got my name and my education on here, I don't know what to do, then probably do the project first.
Okay. Thanks.
Someone said next week there will be a salary negotiation webinar. I was not aware of that. I haven't kept track of everyone's schedules. That sounds fantastic. I'm not sure who's running that, but we can look at the events page and see. I'll pop over there really quick so you can see where that is. You will get an email after this session, and we'll ask for your feedback. So any feedback you have, ideas on other events that you would like to see, we're happy to take in all the suggestions that we can. So yeah, upcoming events, we've got reevaluating your financial worth, negotiating your salary on Thursday, June 4th. That should be really good. Looks like career coach Jackie will be running that. Excellent. I can, you know what I'll send you that link exactly right now to RSVP.
Oh, thank you.
So that if you want to get to it quickly, there you go. Marina said she's not able to put in her profile, but we can look her up. We've got June's question answered. So yeah, I think that's it. So thank you all for attending. I appreciate everyone getting in those breakout rooms and participating and practicing. That's what makes us all better. And I enjoyed meeting all of you, and maybe I'll even speak to some of you in a one-to-one coaching session soon.
Okay, thank you. And I have one question about recording. I see you recording the video. Can I see the recording?
Yes. Let me get you that link as well really quick. We have it. This particular recording will be posted probably in a few days.
Okay.
But I'll give you the channel that Udacity, where the career channels are, where we put all the videos. Let's see.
So I will see lots of videos.
Yeah, so this. let's see.
Oh.
Let me find we have, if you go to YouTube and go to Udacity, and then there's a career coaching events, and I'll put that link in the chat box right now as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Can you see that now? So that's the YouTube channel, and they will upload these, you know, usually within a few days of the event happening.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So if you want to
Yeah,
make sure
sure.
everyone copies and pastes everything you want, or save your chat, however you like to do it. And you can save that information. I see a couple people popped on really late. That's okay. Thanks for popping in, but we are at the end of the session. Sorry that you weren't able to get here a little sooner, but it will be recorded and you can watch it on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a
Thanks,
good
everyone.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.